We're coming back here like a fucking 100 times. I am so mad. I am so fucking mad at these people. They don't do this to fucking me. We're gonna fucking ritualistically humiliate them. I am coming back here every fucking weekend if I have to. Like, this is never over. I win, they fucking lose. That's how the world fucking works. Little fucking kikes. They get ruled by people like me. Little fucking octoroons. My ancestors fucking enslaved those pieces of fucking shit.
We're gonna win.
I rule the fucking world. Those pieces of shit get ruled by people like me. They look up and see a face like mine looking down at them. That's how the fucking world works. We are gonna destroy this fucking town.
You may be wondering who that sad, fragile piece of human garbage shouting racial slurs is. That would be Richard Spencer, well-known white nationalist and Nazi. Now, you may be wondering why I showed it to you. Well, that would be because the day after that clip was released by Milo Yiannopoulos, Lauren Chen found herself being questioned on Twitter for her irresponsible platforming of, and defense of, Richard Spencer. Apparently, advocating for an ethno-state wasn't enough of a red flag for Lauren to realize that she was dealing with a Nazi, and she was immediately called out by ContraPoints for her interview, which is a generous term for just letting Richard come on your rather large platform and spew his dogshit ideology, which led to Chen talking with Contra about it. That interview has been set to unlisted, and I can't for the life of me understand why, but I was able to watch it, and I'm going to share a couple of clips from it, as well as talk about other ways that Lauren Chen enables white supremacists. Let's jump in.
In effect, what it does, because in a way, it wasn't necessarily you giving a platform to hate. In a way, I know this sounds like ridiculous, but let me explain myself. In a way, what it is worse, which is a platform for the kind of euphemisms in which hate promotes itself. So Richard Spencer, I mean, you have to admit, like, he has a talent for kind of making this all seem very reasonable and relatable and the kind of thing that a hipster in Brooklyn could get on board with. And like, so to me, it's the propaganda, the public relations version of it. Like, if in a way, it would be better if you had someone who just came on and was like, I want to kill the Jews, because that person, I think most people can recognize, okay, I don't agree with that. But it's the kind of sneaking in of the idea through this relatable persona and through ideas that seem on the face value potentially reasonable to a lot of people. So again, to me, what's dangerous about it is that I think that Richard Spencer has a talent for presenting these ideas in a way that make them seem like they're sort of within the realm of what could be reasonably discussed, when if you saw what I think is the actual agenda, would be repellent. So it's the kind of normalizing and the kind of sort of making much more palatable something that to most people, in its most brute form, is very unpalatable, that I think is dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't think that it was worth them giving a platform to hate, but it sounds a lot like your problem with the interview was that Richard Spencer came across too well, that he represented his points too reasonably. And I mean, has it occurred to you that maybe he isn't exactly what the media has been trying to push? I mean, because that's a very interesting criticism. Like, you said stuff that I didn't have as much as a problem as I otherwise might have. Like, well, maybe that's actually his opinion, and maybe, all the extreme rhetoric about him actually being a literal Nazi, maybe that was what was incorrect. And again, I can't know what's in his heart. I can't know what he really means to do, but the idea that it was worse than giving a platform to hate because his views weren't that crazy or didn't come across as that crazy, that's a criticism that I'm not really even sure how to respond to. I mean, unless I'm not going to go and prompt my guests until they really start spewing the crazy stuff, if they've, just told me flat out they don't believe that.
If someone is talking about removing approximately 60 million Americans so they can start a white ethno-state, Lauren, you don't have to think very hard to know what's in their heart or what they mean to do. It's ridiculous to imagine that could be done peacefully, and it's obvious as hell that you're dealing with a Nazi. At the very, very least, you should be asking him how he intends to achieve his goals and force him to confront the inevitable consequences of his ideology. And I know some people, despite the first clip I showed in this video and the obvious link between Spencer, white nationalism, and Nazism, are still going to object to me using the word Nazi, but in this specific instance, it is more than reasonable to apply it to Richard Spencer. It's reasonable now, and it was reasonable in 2017 when this discussion took place. Especially when you have footage like this taken in 2016.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory! The mainstream media, or perhaps we should refer to them in the original German, Lügenpresse. To be white is to be a striver, a crusader, an explorer, and a conqueror. We build, we produce, we go upward. And we recognize the central lie of American race relations. We don't exploit other groups. We don't gain anything from their presence. They need us and not the other way around.
Or this statement made to Vice in 2013, which reads, quote, "Our dream is a new society, an ethno-state that would be a gathering point for all Europeans. It would be a new society based on very different ideals than, say, the Declaration of Independence." And even Richard Spencer admitted in a stream after she interviewed him that Lauren, at best, was a useful idiot, willing to expose her audience to his bad ideas virtually unopposed.
Some of these younger millennials are really open in ways that other people aren't. Like, I don't know if you guys saw this interview I did with Roaming Millennial, but she's a very nice girl. She's very smart. She's like, and she's basically like kind of alt-right, I guess sympathetic. I mean, she's not really alt-right. Kind of a
isn't she? She's a happa like me, right?
She's half Chinese. I think her dad's Chinese, something like that. But she's a very genuine person. Like, again, it's not her fault that she's mixed.
Yeah. She's pretty nice.
You know, she's a genuine person, and she's like open to it. I get this a lot with a lot of these just young kids. They're not freaked out like the boomers are.
So with all that out of the way, let's jump right back into the ContraPoint Lauren Chen interview that took place in 2017.
It's actually not adding to understanding to give the, because to me that this Richard Spencer interview that you did, it very much had the feeling of like with, you know, Roaming Millennials channel hosts guest lecture by Richard Spencer or something like that. Because as you said, it was him mostly talking the whole time. And to me, people who see what Richard Spencer says of himself without any kind of, without seeing these major things contested, that is actually misinformation, because I don't trust the good faith of Richard Spencer. I don't believe this is a sincere person who's making good faith arguments. I think it's slick public relations for something that would be evidently monstrous if seen in a more clear light. And so I feel that as an interviewer or as a debater, you have a kind of obligation to shine that light on it. And I feel like that didn't happen in that interview.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, again, there's the assumption of, no, but he doesn't really believe that. And that, you know, honestly, I think that I take issue with that, because that's often what people accuse me of. You know, when I talk about things like not wanting affirmative action for university admissions, a lot of people will accuse me, oh, well, that's just a way to get Black people out of colleges and keep them complacent. And it's like, I do think there is an issue with kind of trying to take what someone says and then escalate it to a point that they haven't themselves condoned.
So yeah, the entire hour-plus long discussion is the same talking point over and over again. Contra trying to point out that interviewing Spencer isn't the real issue, but the way in which Lauren did it irresponsibly, by allowing Richard to just spew his propaganda unopposed, was. And Lauren just making excuses for her failure as an interviewer to push back against very little, if anything, the white nationalist had to say to her and her 100,000+ subscribers. Lauren just continually says that she couldn't possibly know what was in Richard Spencer's heart, even though he was on record calling for a white ethno-state long before this interview ever took place. I also couldn't help but notice that Lauren had no issues pushing back hard against ContraPoints, but spent next to no time pushing back against Spencer. In my last video, in which Lauren Chen endorsed destruction of property and theft using Christianity, I took a little bit of flack for pointing out that the thumbnail included the phrase "dis volt," and how scholars have pointed out that it's routinely used by racist white nationalists. However, just the other day, Lauren came out as a Christian nationalist. If the name doesn't give it away, you might be wondering what that is. It turns out that Christian nationalism, and those who espouse it, tend to scare even other Christians. For example, in July of 2019, a group of Christian leaders wrote a letter condemning Christian nationalism. In part it read, quote, "Christian nationalism seeks to merge Christian and American identities, distorting both the Christian faith and America's constitutional democracy. Christian nationalism demands Christianity be privileged by the state, and implies that to be a good American, one must be Christian. It often overlaps with and provides cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. We reject this damaging political ideology and invite our Christian brothers and sisters to join us in opposing this threat to our faith and to our nation." End quote. She has also signal boosted other white nationalists, such as Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern, and has pushed other white nationalist talking points, such as cultural Marxism.
Social justice is at its very core a Marxist ideology. And I know I'm on the right, but I'm not some crazy right-winger accusing everybody of being a dirty commie, even though some of these people, really, they are dirty commies. But this whole story of group identity and oppressor versus oppressed is entirely in keeping with the historical interpretation found in the Communist Manifesto. If you haven't yet read the Communist Manifesto, I really recommend you do. It's a short read. It shouldn't take you longer than about 15 minutes. You can find it for free online, and it'll give you so much insight into how these people think. While Marx lamented about the injustices of the bourgeoisie, the SJWs complain about the patriarchy. They are two sides of the same oppressive coin. Of course, what these similarities mean is that the same arguments of liberty and individualism that can be used to debunk the Marxist worldview can also be used against the social justice worldview.
Cultural Marxism is a conspiracy theory pushed by the likes of Chen and Jordan Peterson that has deep anti-Semitic Nazi roots.
Well, you know, the irony, and perhaps there's a deep meaning to it, the irony is that cultural Marxism is a derivative of a term called cultural Bolshevism, which meant basically the same thing. And this was invented by the Nazis in Germany as a way of organizing the German population to be critical of everything to the left of the Nazis. They were all either dupes of the communists that lay behind them, or wittingly doing their dirty work of spreading secretly and in the schools and in the films and in the museums this kind of evil Bolshevism. There's therefore some symbolic interest in the fact that Jordan Peterson or Steve Bannon would find in their minds the same phrase to play the same game, to argue that somehow insidiously the Democrats, liberals, everything left of where they are is somehow infected by a dangerous disease. It is hallucinatory, it's nutty, but it can serve as a way to organize people to be hateful towards those they disagree with.
If you've watched any amount of anti-SJW content on YouTube, you may notice that the talking points that Professor Wolf brought up in that clip sound eerily familiar. One of the saddest things about Lauren Chen's grift is that no matter how hard she pushes white supremacy and Christian nationalism, she'll never truly be accepted by them. She's a woman and she's part Chinese, neither of which fit in with a white nationalist ideal view of the world. Sure, they'll grow and use her platform for as long as it seems useful to do so, but as soon as she questions them or they feel as if they no longer need her platform, they'll turn on her. And it's already started to happen. For example, even when she jumped to defend Richard Spencer on Twitter, he basically made fun of her. And just the other day, she decided to defend Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, who had this to say about her earlier.
Boonish. Who's the talent on CRTV? They got Roaming Millennial. Okay, give me a break. Why don't you just go to adult websites? Let's be real. There's really no need for Roaming Millennial in the 21st century. You've got porn and you've got men who talk about politics. What market is served, like, combining the two, and they're both worse? Shitty political commentary and, like, some cleavage. Who wins? Who wins in that scenario? Maybe that made sense 25 years ago, 15 years ago. But in this day and age, we're going to hear some airhead broad talk, regurgitate men's talking points from 3 years ago inadequately, Well, she's got some cleavage going on. How is that a victory? How is that? Who wins? Just watch porn, or just watch America First. You don't need to watch. She did a video the other week debunking the wage gap between men and women. Oh, my mind. There's just a hydrogen bomb going off in my brain. Radiation killing me from the fallout from that blast. I'm turning into a ghoul. I'm turning into some creature from Fallout. Save your bottle caps, people, because the radiation from that nuclear knowledge bomb is just roasting us. It's turned America into a wasteland. You're telling me that the gender pay gap isn't real? Like, give me a break. We've known this since 2015, and that's roaming millennial.
She later deleted the tweet, which Nick was sure to rub in later. So yeah, Lauren may make a lot of money in the short term at the expense of her principles, if she ever really had any, but in the long run, she'll never really be part of the misogynistic, racist hate club, no matter how much she wants to be. She'll always be a useful idiot. I guess only time will tell whether she comes to this realization and turns it around. I originally began this video by looking at one of her most recent videos, which she released a day after the Richard Spencer clip I played at the beginning of this video. So we've come full circle, and while I've done a lot of research into that video, I'm still waiting for a few more pieces of information, and I don't want to rush it out before I'm ready. I guess that means there might be a part 2 to this video in the near future. But if you like my work and would like to support me, I could really use your Patreon support. Videos like this one won't be monetized, yet I think this topic is important to explore, especially in today's political climate. And if you do decide to support me, just know that I release at least one, but usually multiple D&D maps that are free for all of my patrons to download and use in their games every month. As always, thanks for watching, take care, and cheers.
You take me home, invite me in. The lights go down and we begin.